the presidential campaign in 2008. So Barack Obama was a young candidate, guys. He ran against John McCain, who was a Republican. And John McCain picked as his running mate a young Alaska governor named Sarah Palin. You guys might remember who she is. I'll show you a picture of her. Sarah Palin. But the whole reason why I'm bringing up the Republicans is because the two Republican candidates here, the presidential and the vice presidential candidate, didn't really seem all that connected to the real problems that people in America were facing at the time. This is Sarah Palin, in case you've never seen her before. So John McCain and Sarah Palin were running against Barack Obama and his running mate Joe Biden, right? And well, it turns out that, like I tell you, the Republicans seemed a lot out of touch. Like they were criticizing a lot of the Democrat ideals from back in the 60s, not really Democrat ideas and ideals from current time. And so a lot of Americans didn't really put their trust on the Republican candidates. And in 2008, the majority of them voted for Barack Obama. Barack Obama got only 43% of the white vote in America. But as you can see from this presidential election map here, he carried the majority of the coastal states. That means states on the coast of the United States. And he even carried some states that traditionally went to Republicans, like Indiana. Indiana had gone 60% with George W. Bush in the election of 2000 and 2004. And the majority of them voted for Barack Obama in 2008. And the reason that Foner gives for this is that a lot of those Republican states were facing high unemployment. And Barack Obama promised to help those that were unemployed, to help them with some financial help. So him and Joe Biden won the election also because they were able to group up with black voters and Latino voters. Latino voters helped him carry the states of Nevada, California, New Mexico, and Colorado. So those were the reasons why he won those states, because of the black and Latino voters. Now, Foner says that a lot of Americans seemed really happy about this. In fact, a lot of the public seemed very proud of themselves because they were able to get a black candidate into office. This was a political cartoon from the time, showing on the left a character here from 1955 and showing him in 2008. Let me ask in the chat, who's that character from 1955? That's Rosa Parks. There you go. That's Rosa Parks, homies. So in this cartoon, the cartoonist is trying to show you progress, right? How far we've come from 1955, when Miss Rosa Parks had to sit in the back of the bus, to now in 2008, when Barack Obama is sitting in the limousine, the presidential limousine, right? Here's him and his family on election night. More than 1 million people, traveled to Washington, D.C. to see the inauguration. Excuse me. 1 million or more people were there at the inauguration in Chicago. I'm sorry, not in Washington, D.C. So this is a real important election for a lot of people. A lot of people placed their trust on Obama, and 60% of Americans who were polled the very next day after election said that they were excited about an Obama administration. Okay? So he was met with a lot of hope. In fact, that was his campaign slogan: change and hope. Right? And a lot of Americans were behind that idea. A lot of Americans supported that kind of idea. So, like I said, 1 million or more people traveled to his inauguration to see Obama. And Obama, in his inaugural speech, promised things that Republicans hadn't talked about in a long time, like the common good over individual freedom. Republicans usually favor individual rights and individual freedom, but Barack Obama went in a different direction and said instead that he favored the common good, good for the community, good for the people. He said he was vowing to protect the environment, to fight inequality, to make access to healthcare more easy for Americans. And he also promised that he wasn't going to fight with other nations, that he was going to seek diplomacy with other nations. So a lot of people backed that idea. He also vowed that he was going to close the prison at Guantanamo Bay. Here's the changing of the portraits at the prison. There goes George W. Bush's picture, and Barack Obama's on the wall instead. But spoiler alert, homies, it's 2021, and Guantanamo Bay prison is still open. This, by the way, if you don't know, is the prison where we hold all the terrorists that attacked, that were part of the attack, on September 11th. So that prison is still there. Now, when Obama was in office, like I told you, he helped bring a lot of change. And so, what were the kinds of change that voters hoped for when they elected Obama? Let's talk about those. The first part of his initiative was to invest in the economy. And one of the biggest ways to invest in the economy, according to him, was healthcare. So in March of 2010, Barack Obama and the Democrats proposed a new healthcare plan, which would require individuals to buy an insurance plan. And it would require businesses to provide help for that insurance plan. It would also require the government to give a subsidy or a small amount of financial help so that people could buy a healthcare plan. And if people didn't have a healthcare plan by the end of the year, they'd have to pay a small fee. This would encourage people to all get healthcare. Now, Democrats were all behind this, but not a single Republican voted for it. Every Republican in Congress voted against it. They said that this was an example of government takeover. In fact, some Republicans started calling this plan Obamacare. Obamacare. That was their kind of insulting term for this healthcare plan. Because Obama cares, says Danny. I'm not sure if you're with Danny over there, but he says because Obama cares. So yeah, Obama was planning this healthcare plan, him and the Democrats, and the Republicans didn't like it, especially because they thought that this was the government taking over the healthcare industry. And this was kind of scary for them. This meant socialism and socialized medicine. Anyway, one of the biggest challenges he faced when he was president, his first term, was the big BP oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico. Here you see a pelican in the image full of oil. But in spring 2010, this company called British Petroleum was drilling for oil in the Gulf of Mexico, and they faced one of the largest spills in history. Millions and millions of gallons of oil and petroleum were spreading in the Gulf of Mexico. They affected the coasts of Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Florida. And one of the reasons we found why this happened, one of the investigations led us to know that this happened because of lack of oversight. This company had been having a lot of accidents. They had been having a lot of, how could I say this, shady deals with investigators who went to see and inspect their oil rigs. And so we found out that because of the lack of oversight, the lack of regulation, this company was able to get away with a lot of problems. And some of those problems eventually led to this oil spill. Now, the people that were in charge of BP never got convicted, never got arrested. They were not put in jail for this. In fact, they had been working with governments from other nations so that they wouldn't be responsible financially for this kind of accident. And so the owners of BP walked away free. But this was a big challenge for Obama environmentally. The economy was also a big challenge for Obama. And here are the three main points that Foner talks about in the book. He mentions financial reform, the problem of inequality, and the Occupy movement. So these are the three that I'm going to finish with here real quick. Financially speaking, when Obama took office, the economy was kind of struggling. As you remember from the 2008 Great Recession, the economy was in a real bad shape. And so President Obama proposed, along with the Democrats, an $800 billion stimulus package that was supposed to be a tool to save the economy. And the Republicans hated it. They thought that this was the biggest, most expensive plan in our history. And so they thought that this was just going to be kind of another New Deal or another Great Society. And so most of them did not support this new financial plan. Now, Obama said, okay, well, we'll work with the Republicans. And they eventually passed the stimulus package. And they also took over a lot of industries that had been deregulated in the past. That means they were going to start checking up on industries like healthcare, the oil industry, so that these companies wouldn't make the same mistakes that caused these problems, right? They also promised they were going to reform Wall Street, which is the financial sector of our economy. All those people that are buying and trading stocks, Obama promised he was going to keep an eye on them. I remember this, guys, because after he proposed this plan, after this passed in Congress, I remember I got a letter from all my credit card companies saying that due to new laws, they had to tell me how much it was going to cost me to borrow money from their credit cards. And so every month now, the statement says how much it's going to cost you if you pay just the minimum on your credit card. Why? Because the government under Obama forced them to do that. Before, credit card companies used to not have to tell you. They used to just loan you the money, and if you got in debt, that was your problem. But now it's on the fine print, homies. It has to say that, how much it's going to cost you to borrow all that money. So Obama really tried hard to get into this reform mindset, right? This is really different from Republicans, guys. Republicans don't think it's the company's responsibility to warn you. They think it's your responsibility. Majority of Republicans think that if you get in debt, that's your problem. You're not stupid, right? No one's forcing you to borrow money. But Democrats, on the other hand, believe that if you're borrowing money, you should at least know what kind of problem you're getting into, right? I don't know what you think about this, but that was specifically Obama's idea. Now, in terms of inequality, the country was real unequal, homies. Like there was a lot of inequality in America. Let me just tell you a few points here so you can remember why it was so unequal. See, since 2008, wages had been stagnant. That means that people's salaries had not grown for the most part. He says that the top 10% of Americans owned about half of all the total income in America. That means the rich were really rich and the poor were really poor. He in fact, Foner says that the middle class even shrunk during this time, and the working class, the poor class, grew exponentially. So there was more poor people than ever before. Real incomes declined. That means that most people's salaries actually went down during this time. McDonald's, for example, was offering people financial advice. They had a website in 2010. This is one of the most ridiculous things I've ever heard. But in this website, people could go see McDonald's tips for financial freedom. So you would get, for example, a tip that would say, hey, don't spend more than $20 a week on going out to eat, right? Or split your food in smaller pieces so that it can last longer. I was like, what, really? McDonald's giving me advice about what to do with my food? Anyway, it was a really hard time for a lot of people. What were you saying, Danny? McDonald's is giving advice. Right. Guys, McDonald's, for example, during this time was paying $7.25 an hour. That's the federal minimum wage, right? But most workers were not seeing any raises in their salaries, and most of the workers from McDonald's Corporation had flexible schedules, which means they didn't know when they were going to work until just a few days before their shift started. And so it was really hard to plan long term for like childcare, daycare, for example. So a lot of people couldn't show up to work. So it was a really hard time for a lot of the working class. Finally, some young people had it, and they started the Occupy movement. I hope you guys remember this. This happened during your time here, but let me show you an image here, just so you can see what I mean. In September 17th of 2011, a few young people started to camp out outside of Wall Street in Zuccotti Park in New York City. Wall Street is an actual street in New York where all the financial sector is. And they decided to camp out there in the park against the corporate criminals, they called, of Wall Street. So they started to have like protests outside of Wall Street, saying that they were the 99% of people who are the poorest in America. And they got a lot of followers, homies. A lot of people started to get behind this idea that corporate criminals should go to jail, that it's these people in the wealthy financial sector that are causing all the problems in America. I skipped over these graphs, but I wanted to show you this data right here. Income inequality, that means how many people are poor and how many people are really wealthy, the difference between them, right? So as you can tell, the higher the number, the worse off we are. So by 2010, look at that graph right there. It's really unequal in America. That means the rich are really rich and the poor are really poor. Most people in these red areas on this map lived below the poverty line. That means they made less than $14,000 a year, right? So in the darkest red areas, as you can tell really close here to El Paso, for example, almost 40% of all people lived below the poverty line. That's tough, guys. That's tough. That means that a lot of people are struggling. What do you think about all this data? What does this make you think about? What connections are you making? Because you were alive during this time. Do you remember any of this? Danny says yes. What about you homies at home? What do you think? So you guys were struggling. Yeah. Wow, I couldn't find a job. My grandma had a job. Yeah. Danny's talking to me about his struggles at home. But yeah, guys, I wasn't living at home anymore after Obama was president, but I remember during the term that Bush was president, I still had to live at home because I was going to college. And yeah, we were struggling. I remember my parents getting on food stamps in 2002, because we couldn't afford it. We just couldn't afford food. And so we had to rely on state aid to be able to survive. But let's finish up here, guys. I just want you to know that Foner doesn't really give Barack Obama a whole lot of praise. In fact, Foner's kind of critical of Obama. I'm going to tell you why here. Okay, a lot of people really were excited about Obama's first term. They really thought he was going to make change and make things happen. But Foner says that Barack Obama had a lot of weaknesses. And so he's going to tell you 4 big weaknesses he had there on page 1139. But I'm going to summarize them for you here. He says that Obama didn't do enough for public health care. In fact, the Obamacare package didn't have a public option. In other words, the government didn't give like a Medicare option for most people who were poor. He said that Barack Obama, when he was trying to reform the economy, actually hired people from Wall Street. And those people were the ones that caused the problems in the economy. So, how can you hire someone who caused the problem to find a solution? That's what Foner thinks. And then he says that he didn't really help any of the people who were facing foreclosure. They were losing their homes. Their mortgages were starting to fail. And so he finally says that proof of all of this is that in 2008 and 2009, the economy lost 8 million jobs. 8 million people lost their jobs. So he says that while Obama was hopeful and while Obama wanted change, he said that he did face a lot of challenges, especially from Republicans in Congress. And so he didn't get a lot of those packages he wanted to get passed. What do you think, homies? What do you think of Barack Obama? Give me your thoughts here in the chat. Give me your questions, your epiphanies.